On Scientism. It is amazing how many people I listen to or dialogue with on YouTube and in the wider world that adhere implicitly or explicitly to Scientism. The adherent of Scientism may not even know that their epistemology is what it is, namely, that they are proponents of Scientism. They may be unaware of that fact. Nevertheless, Scientism has permeated every level of Western society. I think I am right when I say that Scientism has been largely discredited in academia, however. That is, in the subdivision of the academy which is concerned specifically with questions of epistemology or more generally of philosophy. Before I explain why Scientism ought to be rejected, I think I should explain precisely what Scientism is in the first place. It is the view that all of the knowledge we possess, or could in principle ever obtain, comes to us by way of science and by way of science alone. Now, there was a debate a while ago in Mexico, in Mexico, between Richard Dawkins and others against William Lane Craig and others. And during this debate, Dawkins made the remarkable claim that questions of meaning are silly, for they are beyond the ken of scientific investigation. This betrayed Dawkins' subscription to Scientism. If he is consistent in that subscription, then I am glad that I am not his wife. Honey, your professed love for me is meaningless, for I could not study it in my biology lab. Don't bother me with such nonsense. We could imagine him saying that to her. Of course, various body chemistry states and secretions of various things in the brain or by the brain that are associated with feelings of love could be studied and are studied by biologists, but love itself is not within the ken, I would think, of biology. At any rate, that is what Scientism is. All that we could possibly know, Scientism says, comes to us by way of science and by way of nothing else. Science alone gives us all that we know. This raises a couple of questions. The first question it raises for us is, what does one do with the vast treasure trove of knowledge handed down to us from antiquity? Scientism proponents sometimes caricature pre-Enlightenment man as ignorant buffoons, superstitious, gullible, etc. Now, whether that is too harsh or not, the very least we can say is that the older generations of persons were living in a pre-scientific age, science in the modern, I suppose, Baconian sense. It was before the scientific revolution. Yet they have told us very much. Much true knowledge has been passed on to us from our forebears, which we ignore only at our peril. This knowledge is not at all at home within a scientism framework. The second question raised by scientism is, what about all of the knowledge we now know, which is not accessible to us by the five senses. We did not come to know it through appeal to the five senses, through the medium of the five senses. I'm not just talking here about theological higgledy-piggledy, pie in the sky in the sweet by and by, and angels dancing on pinheads. I take it as absolutely obvious, rather, that, for example, 2 plus 2 equals 4, yet we cannot put 2 in a jar on a shelf. We cannot weigh addition or equality in a scale. We may very well be able to place two things in a jar on the shelf, but the number 2 per se, we know that, again, 2 plus 2 equals 4, and we know this not by way of science. Scientism proponents simply cannot account for this knowledge. So the second question is, how do they try to do this, and why do we let them get away with it? Alright, so now that we have a better understanding of what scientism is, we can examine why it cannot be true. And what I am about to say, I want to be clear that it is not science which I am arguing against. Science itself is a very fine thing. It is a powerful epistemological tool which has accomplished much intellectual good and contributed to much technological and/or medical advances which have been very helpful to us. So it's not science, but scientism that I'll be arguing against presently. Scientism is, in a word, hypocritical. It is the epitome of hypocrisy. That is why all rational persons ought to reject it. It does not bear up under its own criterion. What experiment was done to establish scientism's creed? What test could possibly be performed in the laboratory that would establish it? If everything we know must be known through science, then that fact itself must also be known through science. But, of course, it is not known through science. Indeed, even in principle, it cannot be. Scientism is self-referentially defeated in that way. Well, thank you all for watching. Please respond, especially if you disagree. And that concludes what I wanted to say for now about this topic. But of course, if you comment, we can continue the dialogue. So please respond. Thanks for watching again, and shalom out.